Texas has long been famous for its booming economy and low taxes. For decades, the state has had no income tax, and that attracted millions of new jobs and residents. But lately, many Texans are feeling the pinch. Even after historic tax cuts, home prices and rents have climbed to record highs. Governor Greg Abbott has made slashing property taxes a top priority, but he admits that tax cuts alone won't solve the problem. In this video, we'll break down what Texas has done on taxes, why those cuts may not be enough, and what else might help Texans keep a roof over their heads. Disclaimer: this video is for informational purposes only and is not financial or investment advice. Always consult a qualified professional for help with your specific situation. Texas tax relief efforts. Because Texas has no state income tax, local governments rely heavily on property taxes to fund schools and services. That has meant Texans pay some of the highest property taxes in the nation, despite Texas's overall low tax reputation. In the 2023 legislative session, lawmakers launched roughly an $18 billion package to cut those taxes, the largest property tax relief plan in state history. The 2023 package included major changes like doubling the main homestead exemption and using state funds to lower school tax rates. To enact it, the legislature passed bills and then put the key parts to voters. In November 2023, Texans overwhelmingly approved a constitutional amendment to implement the plan. Over 80% voted yes. Officials estimated this relief would cut the average homeowner's school property tax bill by about $1,250 per year, roughly $100 per month. This level of relief was only possible because Texas had an enormous budget surplus at the time. Revenues from sales taxes, oil and gas, and federal COVID relief had ballooned. The state started 2023 with around a $33 billion surplus, so it could afford to spend heavily on tax cuts. Supporters said this was a one-time opportunity to give money back to taxpayers. Critics warned that using so much surplus could leave less for schools, infrastructure, and other needs in the future. Governor's 2025 tax cut push. After the 2023 cuts, Governor Abbott did not stand down. In early 2025, he declared property tax relief an emergency priority for the new legislative session. Abbott said housing affordability had become a crisis for Texans, and he urged lawmakers to find roughly $10 billion in new tax cuts this year. Texas still had a healthy surplus, about $24 billion in early 2025, but it was smaller than before. The budget had already reserved roughly $6 billion for property tax relief, about $3 billion of that already committed, leaving only about $3.5 billion in free funds. To reach $10 billion, the state would have to identify new revenue or repurpose other spending. That is a tall order in any budget. Abbott and other leaders discussed ideas like raising the homestead exemption even further or giving targeted breaks to small businesses and landlords. Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick and other top Republicans signaled they wanted more relief for homeowners and companies. On the other hand, Texas law still requires voters to approve large changes to school tax funding. In practice, that means any huge new tax cut plan would likely have to go on the ballot again. So even if the legislature passes a bill, Texans could get to vote on it later. Declaring property taxes an emergency item allowed Abbott to fast-track these proposals, but it also highlighted the challenges. For example, if too much money goes to tax cuts, there could be less available for education, health care, or road projects. Lawmakers are already debating those trade-offs in Austin. The housing affordability challenge. So why are Texans so focused on property taxes right now? A big reason is that housing has become much more expensive. Home prices in Texas have been rising far faster than incomes. Between 2019 and 2023, The statewide median home price jumped roughly 40%. In practical terms, that means a typical house that cost about $240,000 in 2019 might cost around $335,000 today. In high-growth cities like Austin, Dallas, Fort Worth, and Houston, the increases have been even more dramatic. Many smaller cities and suburbs have also seen double-digit percentage gains. At the same time, mortgage interest rates have spiked. By late 2023, the average 30-year fixed mortgage rate was around 7.8%, much higher than the 2 to 4% range from a few years ago. Higher rates mean much larger monthly payments for the same loan. Together, the higher prices and higher rates have pushed the total cost of buying a home well above what many families expected. In fact, roughly 40% of Texas households now spend over 30% of their income on housing, a condition economists call being cost-burdened. This means a large share of Texans are devoting most of their paychecks just to keep a roof over their heads. Population growth has made the squeeze worse. Texas has led the nation in population growth, with millions of people moving here for jobs, lower taxes, and more space. But new housing construction hasn't kept up. Estimates suggest Texas is short by a few 100,000 homes compared to demand. In many booming areas, builders simply can't finish new houses and apartments fast enough, so supply remains tight. This shortage drives up both home prices and rents, since everyone needs somewhere to live. Local costs and rules also play a role. Construction materials and labor became more expensive during the pandemic. Many cities have zoning laws that effectively limit development, for example, requiring large lots for single-family homes. Such rules keep neighborhood density low and make land use inefficient. Texas has begun to address these issues. For instance, a recent law lets builders and owners hire private third-party inspectors to speed up permits. But many experts say much more is needed to streamline building and allow more units on the same land. All of this helps explain why Texans still feel squeezed even after the tax cuts. A homeowner who saves $100 per month in taxes may still have a mortgage that is hundreds more each month than just a few years ago. Renters who get no property tax break feel the price surge directly. In short, lowering tax bills gives immediate relief to those already in homes, but it doesn't increase the number of homes or directly bring down market prices. That's why, even after tax relief is approved, many Texans call the situation an affordability crisis. Why tax cuts may not be enough. Cutting property taxes is popular because it puts more cash in people's pockets right away. A typical homeowner's tax bill might drop by about $100 per month, which is certainly helpful. However, critics note that if that same homeowner's monthly mortgage or rent has gone up by a larger amount, the tax cut only covers a fraction of the new cost. Many Texans report that even after the tax cuts, they're still facing higher total housing expenses than before. Another perspective is fairness and reach. Property tax cuts mostly benefit owners. Renters, who make up a significant portion of Texas households, see no direct savings. They still pay market rents, which depend on supply and demand. In high-growth areas, younger families and lower-income workers often rent, so they still feel the burden. Some observers say Texas should consider renters too, for example, through rental assistance or tax credits for renters, because those programs directly help people struggling with housing costs. There's also the fiscal picture. The money to pay for tax cuts comes from the state budget. In 2023, Texas used one-time surpluses and federal aid to help finance its tax relief. Those windfalls won't last forever. If state revenues slow down, continuing large tax breaks could mean either cutting other programs or raising some other revenue later. Experts warn that relying on a few big surpluses isn't sustainable. They say permanent fixes will require addressing the underlying affordability problem, not just shifting money around in the budget. Put simply, tax cuts ease the pain, but don't solve the root cause. Politically, the governor's approach is understandable. Tax relief is popular and quick. But many housing experts argue that long-term affordability will only come from increasing supply. In other words, keeping taxes low helps homeowners now, but actually building more homes will help reduce prices and rents in the future. Texans and their leaders are now grappling with both sides of this equation. Beyond tax cuts, potential solutions. So what can Texas do besides cutting taxes? The answer most experts give is, build more housing. Texas has plenty of room to grow, so the main changes needed are policy ones. Lawmakers, cities, and developers have been discussing many ideas along these lines. One big idea is to allow more types of housing in more places. For example, many residential neighborhoods are zoned exclusively for large, single-family homes. If the state encourages cities to allow duplexes, triplexes, or small apartment buildings in those areas, the number of units could jump significantly. This approach is often called adding missing middle housing, allowing moderate-density homes like townhouses or fourplexes among single-family lots. Some Texas cities have already eased rules slightly to permit backyard cottages or small multifamily buildings. Expanding those reforms could add tens of thousands of new homes over time. Another strategy is to streamline construction. Texas has taken some steps, such as allowing private companies to review plans and inspect buildings to avoid backlog in city offices. More can be done to cut red tape. For instance, local rules that require excessive parking spaces or environmental reviews can add costs to each new home. The state comptroller's office has recommended simplifying these regulations in certain cases. If city permitting is faster and less costly, more developers will start projects, increasing supply. Financial incentives are also on the table. Texas could use state funds to amplify existing programs. For example, the federal low-income housing tax credit program already helps build affordable apartments. The state could offer matching grants or loans to projects that include a set of affordable units. Texas might also issue bond funds or tax incentives specifically for mixed-income developments. Some cities already use bonds or tax increment financing to support housing. The state could complement those local efforts with its own funding or guarantees. There are ideas to help buyers and renters directly, too. One proposal is targeted relief, for example, helping first-time homebuyers with down payments, or providing tax freezes or small stipends for seniors on fixed incomes. These don't lower market prices, but they can ease the burden for vulnerable groups. During the 2025 debates, some lawmakers mentioned such targeted programs for low-income families and seniors as ways to help those who get left behind. Housing also ties into the economy. If workers can't afford to live near their jobs, companies may struggle to hire or may even relocate. The state's economists have noted that expensive housing is becoming a factor for businesses. Some surveys of companies have found housing costs influence where they set up offices. In that sense, boosting housing supply isn't just a matter of homes. It's about supporting economic growth. Many believe that if Texas combines lower taxes with incentives to build, it can maintain its economic appeal without pricing people out. The bottom line from housing experts is that a blend of policies will work best. Tax cuts provide immediate relief to existing homeowners. Boosting construction addresses the fundamental shortage that drives prices. If Texas pursues both, it can help people today while preventing a worse crisis tomorrow. As one housing analyst put it, we need to attack this from every angle. Lawmakers in 2025 will try to do just that. Conclusion. Texas has delivered its biggest property tax cut ever, and more relief is on the way. But underlying all the budget talk is a larger issue: housing affordability. Home values and rents have climbed so high that many Texans still feel squeezed, even after tax relief. Experts warn that without adding more homes, lower taxes alone won't reverse the trends. If you follow real estate in Texas, watch both sides of this story. Tax policy will continue to change the cash flows for homeowners. Meanwhile, zoning reforms and new construction will affect supply. Ultimately, bringing down housing costs means balancing short-term relief with long-term growth. Texas leaders say they want to do both, and the success of that effort will be clear in the coming years. Thank you for watching. We hope this overview helped explain how Texas's tax policies relate to the state's housing situation.